How's it going, everybody? Tactar Ted, 30th day of June. How are you doing today? What is on my mind, you might ask? Very simply, I should have been a Ukrainian general. Absolutely, I should have been a Ukrainian general. Because the expectations for a Ukrainian general are on the floor. They're non-existent. I'm above them. Why? Because if you're a Ukrainian general and you lose a town, suddenly that town is no longer of any strategic importance. In fact, you didn't lose that town. No, you decided to give it up. Now, I hate to say it, folks, but I see this as a recurring narrative now developing, that every time the Ukrainians lose ground, suddenly that town, city, village that was ultra strategically important just a few weeks ago is no longer important. And I'm not buying it, folks. Just like everything else we're getting pushed at. But really, we don't have a press here. We have a bunch of people who regurgitate everything that comes out of Kiev when it comes to that war. And the fact that Severodonetsk was so super important. In fact, it was so super important, I learned how to correctly pronounce it. And now, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's not a big deal. And there actually is some legitimacy to giving up territory to shorten your lines and all this happiness. The only problem is, the town they gave up did not shorten their lines. If they wanted to shorten their lines, they should have gave up Lysychansk, which they are currently fighting for, which the Russians currently have a foothold in, and probably by now, I haven't checked my stuff this morning, but I'm betting that they have the oil refinery, which sits on a dominant piece of terrain. It's great for calling in artillery. It's high, and this is an artillery war, or an artillerist war. In the United States Army, we always said, that the infantry was the queen of battle. Those were the guys that took everything out. The artillery helps. Basically, in Soviet doctrine, artillery was the fucking king of battle. And they're copying the Soviet doctrine now. They're doing the whole slam the shit out of it and move forward. And that's what they're doing. They're clobbering positions, softening them up. Now, why would I say that giving up that territory is not conducive for winning? Well, you would have to understand a little something about this struggle. And when I tell you that this is an 8-year-long war, I'm not kidding. I'm not lying. I'm not stretching things. There's been armed conflict in Donbass since 2014. Now, one of the things the Ukrainians have done over the last 8 years is they have built up fortifications, defenses, a little island of hardened trench complexes with concrete reinforced bunkers, heating, cooling, steel doors full of sand. These are formidable trench works. And they're not one contiguous trench. They are little islands of these hardened defenses that are on key terrain. And they've had 8 years to prepare these places. Well, it's going to take more than a couple days to crack them. It's going to take more than a couple days to soften them up. This is the incredible thing. I see not the Russian army, but Western news putting all these goalposts. Oh, yes, they have to capture all of Ukraine by Victory Day. If Putin doesn't do that, it's going to be a major defeat. Well, who said that? Putin never said that. Shoigu never said that. The Russian General Staff has never made such a claim. In fact, their whole thing is this operation will be over when it's over. They don't have an expiration date on it. They don't have an expiration date on any objectives. The incredible thing is that it's the Western media and our government spin doctors who are putting this expiration date on the shit. They've got to take this by then. They're moving too slow. Let me tell you what. If they move faster, they are going to start losing troops. massively. And I'm not talking the made up numbers that we've been using from Kiev. I'm talking real casualty numbers. And the Russians aren't going to do that. The Russians are going on what I call on the cheap. They're doing it with a minimum amount of troops. And they are using those troops in a way they see fit. If they mobilize the whole army and started using all that, all the assets at their disposal, it's quickly over. Now, I keep hearing about how long it takes to mobilize the army, how long it takes to know. What you guys don't understand is they've got a ton of troops that are still active duty or conscripts and other volunteer forces they're not using. But they're active duty, they're under arms. And once they mobilize, they can send those troops directly to Ukraine. They can call up reservists. Reservists can train in place within the boundaries of the Russian Federation. And it would be over quickly. It would also be a bloodbath. Why would it be a bloodbath? Because at that point, you're going to bum rush everything. The importance of the defenses in or around Donetsk, clear out to Bakhmut and that region, pretty formidable. And you take time, you do the proper, you scout it out, you figure out where the weaknesses are. You artillery the living daylights out of it, missile strikes, all that happiness. And then you send in infantry to mop up what's left. Now, interesting, I hear that Russia is out of missiles and Russia will collapse within a week. I heard that in May, I heard that in April, I heard that in March. This is the longest time to run out of missiles. They only have a limited amount of missiles. The missiles will be done by the end of the month. That was March. And apparently our intelligence people, or the people who are feeding this nonsense to the press, are either propagandists or they're just really, really, really terrible at doing the job of intelligence. In fact, to tell you what, it reminds me of the scene in Saving Private Ryan, where they're at a small town, the airborne is surrounded, and there's a German propaganda guy, and he's saying the Statue of Liberty is kaput, you know, your invasion is lost, we've driven you back in, and he's just lying out through his ass to try to demoralize the troops. Here, they're lying out their ass, and I don't know whether it's to demoralize the Russians, they're not watching our news, or whether it's to try to give you guys hope that you're not pissing billions of dollars down a toilet, which you are. I tell you, the aid we're going is getting blown up. It's getting used. Now, it's a war. I get it. We're supposed to have some losses. The Russians are hunting this stuff. They're particularly going after it. And you know how I know? Because they make sure that when they have video evidence of a destroyed M777 or a Caesar French-made artillery weapon, that they post video of it. And so I'm seeing tons of video. It's tons of video that our press could put out if they were even slightly interested, and they're not. Because they are the only game in town. They don't have to compete with anybody. They don't have to compete with the other side of the issue. All they have to do is stick to the monolithic propagandist bullshit. And you're never supposed to know any different. That's why people are out there in this alternative media. This is why you have people like me who are going out there and saying what we know, what we've seen, what's the truth. You know, unlike CNN, I actually talk to folks in the region who live there. I'm not talking to government officials. I'm talking to people who, and I also follow the Telegram channels of several guys who are over there. And social media has been pretty weird that I'd be able to go and see. And that, you know, they may not give you the whole idea of what the whole war looks like, but they're giving you what they're seeing. And when you start talking to Ukrainian friends who are seeing bad shit, and you're talking to Russian friends or listening to things from Russian that are showing their successes, that paints a picture. And I believe that the media is having a hard time staying on top of it. France 24, I don't know if I discussed this or not, probably have. France 24 did a story the other day that got out. They let it out, that was interviewing, I believe, they were interviewing, I think it was the inhabitants of Lysychansk, which is still under Ukrainian control. And they're talking to these people, and they're all saying, hey, we can't wait for the Russians to get here. We are so done with the Ukrainian government. We are so done with the Ukrainian army. We are waiting for the Russians to come and liberate us, which just flies totally in the face of all the nonsense you're seeing on our TV. And how that made it out on France 24 is amazing. And France 24, when you see it on YouTube, they kind of fudge around with the title to make you think it's something it's not. But dude, it is exactly what I'm telling you. These people are going on. They were only able to find one person who was pro-Ukrainian. Everybody else they talked to were waiting and praying for the Russians to liberate them. And also, they're on popular social media. There is a Ukrainian soldier walking through a village, and he's having a shit fit because everywhere, and this is a Ukrainian village full of Ukrainians, no Russian troops, and there were Z's painted everywhere. And he says the damn civilians here, painting Z on everything, and they tell us that they can't wait for the Russians to get here. He says it's disgusting. How am I supposed to fight? Well, that is what it is, dude. Apparently, the Ukrainian army isn't as popular with a lot of the Ukrainians as this media would love for you to think. So, if I was a Ukrainian general, though, I could terribly fudge up, and everybody would pay, give me cover. Now, probably in 6 months' time, I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to be a general in the Ukrainian army because there's not going to be a Ukrainian army. There may be something similar to the Vostok Battalion, which they have out of Chechnya, after Chechnya was subdued. But I've got to sit here and laugh, folks. Up is down, in is out. That's what they're telling you. And we're letting the media do this to us. We're not calling these people on the carpet. We're not abandoning them. It's amazing. This whole thing, this whole propaganda thing that's going on. And I've said this many times. This is the sort of nonsense we used to make fun of the Soviets about. This is the sort of propaganda nonsense that we used to make fun of the Germans about during the days of the Third Reich. Historically speaking, I don't know what the hell's going on with some of you folks. You ought to know better. And the fact that we have generals who are just giving up towns because that's the way to win a war, is you give up ground. And like I said, there are certain instances where giving up ground is tactically sound if you can get to a better position. Unfortunately, the positions that the Ukrainians have taken after leaving these cities are not any better, not any more defensible. And what they're doing is they're concentrating a larger bag of prisoners to be taken later on. Speaking of which, it's either 6,000 or 8,000 Ukrainians and mercenaries that are currently being held in detention in the DPR and in Russia. And the prisoner exchanges are still very low. I do realize there was 144 people exchanged, and the DPR made sure that the people they gave them back were invalids. There were folks that were missing arms, missing limbs, and in bad shape. It's not going good for Ukraine. It's not going to go good for Ukraine. This thing's been lost for a while. Nobody seems to want to admit or recall it, and that's fine. And not my deal. Anyhow, that's Tactard Ted for this day. I will try to get back to you guys here in a few days with another update on the wonderful mystical things that happen around the world and in our country. Bye.